वाइल्ड लाइफ को लेके आज की दुनिया में 3 तरह के ओपिनियंस हैं। पहले वो लोग हैं जो वाइल्ड लाइफ को सबसे ऊपर रखते हैं और ये मानते हैं कि गांव वालों को बफर से हटा देना चाहिए। दूसरे वो जो वाइल्ड लाइफ का इम्पोर्टेंस नहीं समझते और मानते हैं कि ह्यूमन लाइफ सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट है। और तीसरे बहुत ही कम लोग ऐसे भी हैं जो मानते हैं कि वाइल्ड लाइफ कंजर्वेशन एक बैलेंसिंग एक्ट है और ये बैलेंस बनाने के लिए दोनों पहलू को समझना होगा। टाइगर 24 फिल्म के डायरेक्टर वॉरेन से बातचीत आगे बढ़ाते हैं, लेकिन उससे पहले एक इम्पॉर्टेंट इन्फॉर्मेशन। बहुत से लोगों ने पूछा कि टाइगर 24 को कैसे देख सकते हैं। यूएस और कनाडा में आप नेटफ्लिक्स पे देख सकते हैं और इंडिया में ये मूवी अमेज़न प्राइम पे रेंट करके देख सकते हैं। बहुत से लोग ये आर्ग्यूमेंट देते हैं कि जब अमेज़न प्राइम का सब्सक्रिप्शन ले रखा है तो एक्स्ट्रा रेंटल क्यों दे। मूवी का रेंट सिर्फ 80 रुपीस है और इससे ज़्यादा तो इंसान ऐसे ही वेस्ट कर देता है। कंजर्वेशन का चेन रिएक्शन यहीं से स्टार्ट होता है, आप लोगों से। अगर आप लोग मूवी देखेंगे तो बड़े प्लेटफॉर्म को लगेगा कि ऐसे और मूवीज की डिमांड है और डिमांड होगी तो वॉरेन जैसे और वाइल्ड लाइफ फिल्म मेकर्स और भी अच्छी अच्छी मूवी बनाएंगे, जिसका सीधा असर कंजर्वेशन पे पड़ेगा। तो इंडिया में जिसने मूवी ना देखी हो, अमेज़न प्राइम वीडियो पे जाकर जरूर देखें। चलिए शुरू करते हैं वॉरेन से पॉडकास्ट का पार्ट नंबर 2।
So there's an interesting character in the movie, Muhammad Shakir. You met him in the old city, I think, when he said, "Sir, ये टाइगरों का टाइगर है उस्ताद." और उसने like that guy had at the back of his bike is actually mentioned T24.
Yeah.
Right. So he loves Ustad so much. So what do you think, according to you, within the same community, within the same village, why are there so many contradicting opinions about the same tiger? Has it just got to do with the fact that some people are directly impacted by the killings? Or what is it just an inherited, like a passion which is there in some people who just happen to like the tiger or wildlife and some people don't? Like, what do you think? Why is that the case?
I mean, so when you do a documentary, you want to show the world. So that was the world. And that was recorded before T24 was any kind of famous alleged man-eater. I mean, he had killed people, but he wasn't what he became. That was a 2014 interview. So he was removed in 2015.
Yeah.
And he was a huge tiger, one of the biggest over here, had a massive beard, had a great, regal personality, had a massive territory. So people looked up to him and they're inspired by him, and tigers can be very inspirational. I mentioned that towards the end of the film. I've seen people look at them as if they would works of art, and works of art are inspirational, which is another spiritual reason to keep them going in the wild. So he represents, I think, most of that village. Obviously, Ashfaq's brother, and his immediate family were very upset when their family member was literally ripped apart by this tiger. So that's the simple difference. On the one hand, they look up to him. On the other hand, if you're very close to the person who's been, killed, then you obviously feel for it. But I think the fact that people look up to tigers and consider them amazing, it solves this whole thing of saying, oh, they're a keystone species, they're the king of the jungle. They already know that, and I think that's a good sign in Indian culture and why the tiger is still, thriving compared to the rest of the world over here.
That's true. I think we all resonate with the same fact. Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks for that. Okay, given the facts at hand, like you saw and you've seen maybe more than what we've all seen.
Yeah.
If you were in power at that time, what decision would you have taken for Ranthambore, Tiger 24? What would have happened, like, if you were in power?
Yeah, I get asked that question a lot, and I don't like answering it either side for this reason. Not because I'm not trying to answer your question, because I already presented that polarity in the film. I presented both sides in the best way I could within 90 minutes, okay? And the reason I don't want to answer the question is it doesn't really serve conservation. The message I have in the film is that you should look at both sides of it. You should look at the fact that it is a gray area. You should accept that removing him or keeping him is an imperfect decision either way. But the department, who has got more experience than most of us, makes the best call they can. Should they have taken him out after the first kill? The chief wildlife warden has the right to do it. Should they have waited for a 5th, 6th, 7th, or 8th? That's another way to look at it.
Yeah.
They made a call based on the fact that they thought it would keep happening, that he had had enough kills. The attack occurred right off the main road where there's pilgrims going in. There's people who do those sacrifices where they're laying down with the coconut and they go all the way up to the fort. So all those things were playing in their mind, and emotionally, now again, you'll have to confirm with them, this is what I felt because I've hung out with them, it's sort of like having like this family member who is kind of bad, but you hope will get better. But then he keeps doing something, you're like, okay, we're done. So they actually love him more than some of the people who claim they love him. But they were like, we're done because we can't keep doing this. We can't keep protecting him. So I don't want to answer if the decision was right or wrong, because I actually want to communicate the complexity of it. That it isn't a perfect decision, that the lack of habitat is the main reason for all this stuff. And if that was less of an issue or not an issue, there'd be able to be a proper separation between core and buffer and human settlement. And then you could be more definitive with a tiger who's left the core, entered the buffer, now entered the village, and now killed someone in a village or in the hotel. Whereas here, everything is so close because it's not a perfect system, because they made this core buffer thing after there was all this habitat destruction and after the tiger reserves were already the size they were. And now they're trying to, make it this ideal thing that it's not.
No, that's a very mature answer. And as I remember in the movie as well, there's a point when Sahu says, towards the end of the documentary, that do you think we have any particular agenda against one particular tiger? Like for us, each member is the same. It's just, it's becoming a threat to its own species. So they take the decision based on what they've learned and they've studied. And yeah, exactly. They're the best people in the job. So let them do their job.
Yeah, I remember that with Sahu. Sahu was kind of a funny guy. If you got to know him, like most people didn't get to know him, because he was kind of silent and he would take his time to answer a question, this dramatic pause.
Yeah.
But he actually had a great sense of humor.
Yeah.
And I've hung out with him as I got to know him. When I was first making this film, I avoided the department. Like most filmmakers, we get our permission, we're like little boys who want to quietly take our cameras and get our shots and run away and not show any of the ground reality. This film forced me to show the ground reality. It forced me to talk to the department and say what is actually going on with tiger conservation. And I'm so glad that it did, because now I have a deeper, more meaningful understanding of what is really happening in Ranthambore, and I can actually talk about it because the film forced me to get an in-depth knowledge.
No, thank you for that. Let's move to the next one. Okay, so what emotion did you feel when you saw Noor after all this chaos? I think you saw her last year sometime.
I saw her in January, just this year.
This year as well? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I saw her in January, got a beautiful shot of her. She looked great. She was on her own. She looked like she was on an incline, so it was like symbolic, like she's going up to heaven or something.
Wow.
It was golden light. And she's doing her thing, She's Ustad's former mating partner, a very powerful tigress. One of her canines now is damaged.
Yeah.
Her body's still in pretty good shape, at least when I saw her. She looked like she was eating well. So I think she's doing everything a wild tiger should do, better than any other wild tigress in Ranthambore.
Wow, that's good to know. We hope we can see her someday as well.
Zone 6, you might see her.
Zone 6, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, on to the next one. Your best moments with T24 and probably the least favorite ones.
Some of them just happened so in the moment that I wasn't really appreciating them. Like when I saw him for the first time in that body of water, the shot was symmetrical that people like so much. I mean, like that might have been one of the best moments because that was the christening of the project.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize who he was or anything. I was like, who is this tiger? And I just took my camera and got that shot. Later on, when I was like, I knew I was tracking him. So, for the first feeling you get as a filmmaker, if you're trying one subject animal, is like, where is this guy? Like we need to find him. And so then we find him, and then you hope something happens. So I would say the first time, maybe him playing with the cubs, hanging out with Noor, sharing the kill. And there was, again, a big complexity to it, because on the one hand, he stole the kill from a leopard. Then he protects it overnight so Noor and the cubs can eat. But then if you look at it closely, because I've seen hours of this, he'll also only let them eat so much.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, you can have a little bit, but now you're done because I got this for you. So yeah, so I think all of that, just learning about him, and in terms of the worst moments, not finding him, or finding him and all he's doing is like looking at me and just not moving. I say, okay, I think I've got this shot of you sitting now, So yeah.
Okay. No, they're mostly sleeping, unfortunately. Yeah. Okay. Our first tigers in the wild, like proper seeing, was Jay and Viru from Zone 6.
Yeah.
And we saw them like a couple of times, and then eventually I was in Canada when the news came that Viru passed away after fighting with Fateh. And it made me really emotional, like almost got teary eyes and couldn't like feel okay for the couple of days. And this is one tiger I've only seen twice, not even documented. You saw Ustad for hours and hours, you documented this guy. And did you feel emotionally hurt a bit? Or like, what did you feel when you heard about his demise in December 2022?
I felt sad, but I felt relieved, because he was dying 1,000 deaths being in that enclosure. Even though it was a big enclosure, it's not like a small cage, it's a pretty big enclosure. It's nothing for a wild tiger. He used to roam all over the place, come out on this road, go up through Amreshwar, go on the hill, come make a full round, enter zone 6, 1 and 2. And, it's constantly moving. So for me, him passing away, and also I've had access to some of his last days, and they were pretty painful. And to see him limping like that with the cancer getting worse in his leg and everything. So to me, it was like, he lived his best life in Ranthambore. He was this dominant male. He was the king over here, and that should have been the end of it. I think after he got removed, since the decision was definitive ultimately to remove him, he should have just been shot.
Yeah.
That would have ended it, quicker than keep him going, because it was sort of keeping him alive in a zoo is worse, because he's a wild tiger.
Yeah, I think that's what Valmiki Thapar also suggested in the documentary.
Aditya Singh did, the late great Aditya Singh.
Aditya Singh, okay.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, who passed away.
Yeah.
Yes,
Last year, yes. No, that's true. And I think there's a famous shot from the movie when he's being taken away. He's in the cage and you can see his eyes. This shot.
Yes.
Beautiful. Very sad, but very beautiful shot. Okay, thanks for answering that. So those were all our questions for T24. We'll move into more generic conservation questions, if that's okay. So we'll start with the basic. So we started wildlife 7 years ago, and we've seen things change from that time until now. Even Ranthambore has changed a lot. In general, a lot is changing every day, some for good, most for bad as well. Do you think in general wildlife is drowning, or what do you think about the current wildlife state in India?
It's surviving, and there's some pushes where they're trying to increase the core area. Like over here they are, and they're trying to integrate areas like in Dholpur and Kela Devi. There's programs going on to educate the villagers about the importance, the ecosystem importance of the tiger. On the other hand, people in cities want to keep, building houses. They want energy. They want to escape to the wild.
Yeah.
And their constant escapes to the wilds are some degree of invasion.
Yeah.
So I think to answer the question in a definitive way, the core areas should be pristine. No invasion at all. No reduction in the core, if anything, an expansion or an addition of a buffer. And I think if we do that, tigers will be around. But if we don't do that, tigers are going to have a very tough time. There should also be some integration of certain tiger habitats, because I think that would increase the genetic diversity, which is a problem. But I think given India's kind of progress, as a nation, industrial, etc., the Tigers are doing pretty good. But of course, I'd want them to have much more room.
Yeah.
I'd want Ranthambore to be 4 times the size. You know, I'd want MP to be entirely a tiger reserve. You know, like Kana, Bandhavgarh, everything should all be like one big tiger reserve.
Yeah.
So that would require a lot of more legislation changes. But I think what's practical is there should be extreme fines against any disturbance in the core. Also, I think tourism is very important, but only in the 20% where it should be, and the other areas should be well maintained, and the tigers should be not disturbed over there at all by tourism.
That's true. And then corridors also, like a lot of parks are already doing it. We've seen in Pench, we've seen on towards Zone 10 as well. They made this beautiful bridge so wildlife can actually cross from underneath. So all these things, they're definitely helping. So that's a wonderful answer. Thanks for that. The next one, everyone knows tigers is like the apex predator of the jungle, and he's like on top of the food chain. But a lot of times, like general public, when they see a shot of tiger with a baby deer, a fawn in his mouth, or like hunting these cute animals, I would say, they feel a little sad about the animal, and they like start looking at tiger as a villain. I'm not talking about the wildlife enthusiast or like people who understand jungle, but general, like the first opinion is like, oh God, why didn't you save the fawn? Sometimes like these kinds of. So what do you think, like, what are your opinions as to how that can be changed, and how should people actually look at the tiger? Is he actually a villain, or is it just like people need to be more mindful and understand how the food chain works?
I mean, the tiger can be a villain. I mean, the tiger is a top predator, you know, and you went to walk back here at night, might get ripped apart and eaten, right? So in that sense, they are predators. They do kill, and a deer is less likely to do that. So should people think they're villainous for eating something alive or carrying it in its mouth? They can have that emotion, but I think the answer to that is you could educate them about why they're the top predator, but you could also look to yourself. You're also eating, whether you're a vegetarian or non-vegetarian, you're taking life into your system to survive.
Yeah.
And most humans waste a lot, whereas tigers, you know, most of the time they're not even getting a kill.
Yeah.
So when they do, they're doing it purely for survival. They're not going to a supermarket and just saying, oh, I want 50 ice creams and I want this and I want this. You know, they're only getting what they can to survive. So I think communicating that, I think, would make a difference.
No, that's true. That's all we try to do as well. So yeah, that's a wonderful answer. Okay, I remember you saying at some point in the documentary towards the end that there's nothing quite beautiful, inspirational and important as a tiger in the wild. So what inspires you to still document tigers, and what do you love so much about tigers?
एक कंट्रोवर्शियल टॉपिक पे इतनी अच्छी मूवी बना के वॉरेन ऑलरेडी वर्ल्ड फेमस हो गए, लेकिन उनको टाइगर्स क्यों इतने पसंद है ये जानेंगे नेक्स्ट पार्ट में। और जाने से पहले एक आखिरी बात, बहुत से टॉपिक्स पे बहुत से पॉडकास्ट हर दिन आते हैं, पर इस पॉडकास्ट की खास बात थी वॉरेन के आंसर्स। अगर आप गौर से सुनेंगे तो हर आंसर इतना मैच्योर साउंड करेगा, और ये मैच्योरिटी आती है ईयर्स ऑफ एक्सपीरियंस से और रीडिंग से। कंजर्वेशन का नारा लगाने में और सच में कंजर्वेशन की ओर कदम बढ़ाने में ज़मीन और आसमान का फर्क आ जाता है।